Great to be here. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. And I remember first learning when I was in Jerusalem that of repeating it twice, once for yourself and once for the like a second Shabbos soul that comes down and is with you on Shabbos. That sense of being not alone, but with another. And so we're not quite there, unless maybe some people are already in some part of the world where they already have their Shabbos soul with them. But just as we're ready to move into that space, just to greet that Shabbos soul with sweetness, welcoming it in, I think we all could use a little breath, a break, a ceasing from this week, and a time of just being in the world as it is. So delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And just want to start with just taking a moment to arrive as you are in this moment. And you can choose what will be most of service to you. If you'd like, you could simply listen for the next 10 minutes or so to this teaching, or you can let it be a guided reflection. And if at any point you want to shift into quiet mindfulness, into silence, you're, of course, completely welcome to do that. And then we'll conclude with a 10-minute silent period at the end for a communal practice as we'll all be sitting together. So just always holding that we are in choice and making choices about how we want to practice, being kind to ourselves, and invite you to let your body settle, to feel the support beneath you, the chair or the floor or the ground, whatever is holding you, feeling the drawing down of gravity of your body being brought down and settled. Inviting the breath to be as it is. No need to improve upon it or change it. Just noticing the breathing in, breathing out. And as part of our arriving, invite you to just gently scan your body as if turning on a lamp with really soft, warm light in each room, in each part of your body, starting with your head to your eyes and jaw, maybe even the roof of your mouth. Just noticing if there's any tension and maybe releasing, softening, settling to your shoulders and your arms and hands. Just unclenching a bit. Maybe even dropping just 1 millimeter through our midsection and back, our bellies, our waists, to our hips and legs and feet. And as you notice any tightness, any pain or soreness, see if you can offer that, just a little bit of friendliness. Not a go away, but more like, oh, you're here. Of course you're here. And maybe with that, a small softening, allowing your body to settle, being at ease and alert. In this week's Torah portion in the book of Exodus, Parshat Bo, Moses and Aaron are in the middle of a fierce, exhausting negotiation with Pharaoh. Back and forth, threats and plagues, promises of liberation made and then broken. It's quite intense. There's a real brutality to it. And I'm left with this feeling is, how are we still doing this? And you might just notice what happens inside of you when you hear that as we look around this world, incredulous at the plagues that are upon us, all that is being endured, and who is enduring it, the worst of it, the most vulnerable. And how in this moment can we hold them close? How can we hold ourselves close? Returning to Pharaoh, I wanted to extend a question offered gently, just as a doorway. How many plagues would it take to break your resolve? To play it out in the Torah's invitation, we see Pharaoh, and we could just imagine ourselves in Pharaoh's sandals. You're hit with the first plagues, water to blood and frogs and lice. What is your response? You might say, that's enough. Like, just let the Israelites go. Or maybe in your mind, you decide you want to double down. Maybe something in between. And then just notice that feeling of resistance or that feeling of yielding. We know how the story unfolds. The plagues continue until the 10th, devastating and horrific, the death of the firstborn. The Torah doesn't ask us to romanticize this suffering. It asks us to look honestly at what oppression does to everyone it touches. And in the midst of these plagues, there is the 9th plague, darkness. And I want to spend some time on that today together. A plague that isn't only material, but psychological, internal. Rambam, Maimonides, describes this darkness as physically thick and tactile, not merely the absence of light, but a heavy darkness, a weight on the body and soul. So as you feel safe, you might even imagine a darkness like that, not a scary movie darkness, but more like a thick curtain or a fog. And just notice how your body is in that space. For many of us, when we close our eyes, we still sense light around us. And we have that certainty. I can open my eyes, I can turn on a lamp, I can get up. But in this idea of darkness as a plague, it is not that way. We read, Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness over the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. A person did not see his neighbor, nor did anyone get up from his place for 3 days. But for all the children of Israel, there was a light in their dwelling. Let's just take a moment to be in that space, in that darkness. Not able to see our neighbors, not getting up from this place. This darkness is there for the Egyptians because it turns them inward. Sometimes when we turn inward in darkness, it's not a place that we prefer to be, but we need to go there because there's less distraction. So one invitation is just in this darkness, when we are slowing down, what distractions fall away and what shows up? For the Egyptians, the darkness is a kind of mirror revealing what's been avoided, their oppression of the Israelites. They're finally able to really see themselves. And in this way, the darkness calls us to a compassionate kind of truth-telling, not to be harsh or punishing, but just to move towards clarity of what is true. Finally, we read that Pharaoh lets the Israelites go, and the Torah says, Adonai disposed the Egyptians favorably towards the people, and thus they stripped the Egyptians. So we read here that Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson says that what they're stripped of is their great wealth. And it's not just gold and silver, but also their spiritual energy, this spiritual energy that is also holiness that had been misused and misdirected toward oppressing the Israelites. So let us pause for a second and think about this idea of spiritual wealth in our own life and how we are using it as a country, as a people, and even in our own lives. How are we stewards of that wealth, of that energy? How do we cultivate that dignity and sense of shared belonging, supporting the common good? And maybe even where we're squandering it, not making the most of it. As we prepare to sit now, we'll have about 10 minutes together. Just to notice the breath rising and falling and all that's surrounding us. Not only that sense of darkness that we have discussed, but also that what surrounds us is divine love. That is some of the mirror that we have to look into as well. Sometimes when we're harsh on ourselves, that we need to recall that the divine love is also present, even when we can't feel it so perfectly. Maybe we can invite in just a tiny bit of that right now. So as we prepare to sit, a couple reflection questions that you can just let drift through you like clouds as you want, as useful for your sit. How do we invest in cultivating our spiritual wealth? How do we support others to do this as well? And how do we marshal that physical and spiritual wealth in our own lives? And how do we tend to it? So if you haven't already, I invite you to close your eyes or rest your gaze. Let your body be at ease as we sit for these next 10 minutes. When you are ready, I invite you to wiggle your toes and your fingers and your nose and lift your gaze or open your eyes and begin noticing the room, the light, sound, our bodies. And may the light in our dwellings, in our life, in our world become a light for making good choices. May our stillness become steadiness, and may our spiritual wealth become liberation for us and for others. Shabbat Shalom.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Just beautiful. Beautiful way to take us out of this week and into Shabbat. Friends, we seal the practice by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning, those of you who suffered loss at this time of year, if a yahrzeit, or if you're accustomed to joining the mourners Kaddish for any reason, you're welcome to do that. And for the rest of us who are not reciting Kaddish, it's an opportunity to be present for those who are, create a minyan of comfort and support. And you can put the name or names of those you're honoring today if you're reciting Kaddish in the chat now or after. And if you are reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ma'amad Yirav Yudkei V'Yamid Yudkei, Yeshua Yakom Yisrael, Chut Karim Baruch Amen. Rava Mecha Maria Yisra, Tabach, Hadar B'Hadar
Shlama Rabamim Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu B'Yol Kol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen. Aseh Shalom B'Mirma Puya Aseh Shalom Aleinu B'Yol Kol Yisrael V'Yol Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'Yimru Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
May all those who are mourning be comforted among all those who mourn. Thanks to everyone for staying to support the mourners today. Thanks to Rabbi Benjamin Ross for leading us once again so beautifully today, and Harry Gilboa for holding our tech mishkan here, our sanctuary, steady, firm, strong. And if you're leaving us now, especially if you're in the path of this impending winter storm, or if you're in the midst of the storm already, we hope everyone stays safe and well and warm. And we hope to see you back next Monday on the other side of the weekend. Regardless of the weather, we'll be here. That's one of the beauties of this format, is that we will not have a snow day. I can assure you, on Monday we'll be here, and with a beautiful week of practice, teachers lined up. So please join us next week. And of course, you're welcome just to stay with us right now. And if you like to turn the sound off on your device or computer, you can just stay and sit. Use the container of this community to hold you for a little bit more practice in silence if you like. Turn off the sound and just take this opportunity to sit a little bit longer into Shabbat, or you can join us for conversation about the teaching and to share reflections on the practice. If you would like to ask Benjamin a question, please write question, all in caps, in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye out for your questions and work them into the conversation. Thanks so much, Benjamin. Again, really beautiful. As you were teaching and guiding us, a couple of different kind of quotes kind of popped up and that were connected to the teaching. And I guess I want to start the conversation with one of those. This Parsha, you invited us to kind of sit or stand or sit in Pharaoh's sandals, right? And you asked that very really, I mean, provocative is the word that's coming up, but there's a better word, I think. Just sort of um, powerful question about how many plagues would it take to affect a change of heart or a course of pattern of behavior in you. So I want to stay with that for a minute because one of the beautiful things about how we can work with Torah is that these characters in Torah represent different aspects of ourselves. So even though we've got, it looks like there's a battle going on between Pharaoh and the Israelites, or even, worse, the Egyptians and the Israelites are at war. Actually, we have a tradition that says, you know what, there's Pharaoh. Pharaoh lives inside every one of us. We all have Pharaoh. There's no kind of binary here. All these characters are playing a role in us. And as a result, you could say, well, well, you are Pharaoh too. Like, how do the plagues affect you? And so the quote that came up for me, I don't even know if you're familiar with this, maybe, before your time, maybe, there was a cartoonist named Walt Kelly who did a cartoon strip called Pogo. And he did a play on this quote from, I don't know, I can't remember who it was, some Commodore who said, we've met the enemy and he is ours. We have vanquished the enemies. And Walt Kelly turned it into, we have met the enemy and he is us. I think in association with Earth Day was about environmentalism. But regardless of what it was about, it's such an interesting quote because it says like that which you identify as your enemy actually also lives within you, right? So that leads to that question. How do we work with this idea, especially right now, right? Where many of us may identify external pharaohs, right? What's the deal with meeting the challenge of external pharaohs in the world and at the same time confronting or meeting the pharaoh within us, okay, as you were inviting us to do today? You muted. There you go.
I'm just thinking about your question. Can you
Okay.
say it one more time?
I'll say it one more time. So, you're inviting us to look at the pharaoh within us, which I agree. And then it just kind of raises the question to me, or I imagine objections maybe of others saying like, well, how can we do that? There's, so many pharaohs out there right now that we need
Yeah.
to deal with, right? So I guess what I'm saying is what's the relationship really between um, working with the people whose hearts need to be changed out in the world, right? And whose course of behavior, and looking at what needs to change within us, or how we identify that pharaoh within ourselves.
Mm.
It is a big question,
It's
right?
a big one. I mean, I love it. And I think it's just like a great question. That's a question for all of us more than I
Right.
would have truth and
Right.
an answer.
Right.
But I
Right.
think the couple things arise for me. One is I feel like it's gam v'gam. It's like both. We have to do both. Um,
Yes.
and then I guess in my own journey, I would just say, as someone who worked for 15 years in organizing before going to rabbinical school, and spent a lot of that time also like in therapy and meditating, and like I found that the deeper I went into my own practice with Shabbat or celebrating holidays or text study and prayer, like I found that I became so much more powerful as an organizer, building bridges and working with other
Mhm.
communities. And so that was a real experience of awakening. And in organizing, they say the first revolution is internal,
Yeah.
which I think is probably more like about political education and awakening, which I love. I almost everything that I taught today is because I was like studying the text and like, I don't know, this seems like the darkness, like that seems terrifying. Like, oh my God, like if you
Right.
had a thick darkness over you and you couldn't like, but then also that it becomes like how mindfulness when we're closing our eyes and especially if we do a longer sit or days or weeks, whatever we're doing, like it's I'm starting a program that's going to culminate in a 13-day retreat. And so my son was like, "Are you excited about that?" I was like, "I don't know. Like, I'm terrified and I'm excited because I'm going to find out some stuff
Right.
that I haven't wanted to encounter. So I think when I do that, I'm just encountering what's true, even if I don't
Yeah.
know it yet. And then I
Yeah.
think it helps me to do that work better in the world, both as a teacher and as a partner with others in their own journey of awakening. And I mean, just to like locate it in the most, the biggest picture is like thinking of the Prime Minister, Mark Carney from Canada, just saying like, we
Hmm.
have to be truthful from his point of view about what's happening. We have to be
Right.
truthful. Like, let's stop it.
Right.
Let's just stop
Right.
pretending. And whether you agree with that or not, like it resonated with a lot
Yeah.
of people. And
Right.
it felt like a relief that
Yeah.
leaders at that stage could, a lot of it is posturing, but that they can really just say, oh, let's just be truthful about what's happening now. Because that's like, I
Yeah.
want to deal with leaders that are going to be operate in what is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful answer. And that the midrash about it was so dark that they couldn't see each other, right?
Yeah.
So what you were just saying, sorry, what you just were talking about sort of the combination of, fear and excitement of that sounds like comes from like just not knowing how it's going to go, never having done it. Don't know, you don't know. So it's what the plague of darkness represents is this kind of it's a plague, a fear, that instills fear of not knowing, but also something happens, which leads me to the second quote that came up for me as you were describing that you probably do know of the activist Valerie Kaur. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Do you know
Mhm.
if is that right? Kaur? So do you know
I
if that's the
think
right
are,
word?
but either way, she's
Or
amazing.
okay,
Yeah.
whatever. Uh, who in the first Trump term gave this very powerful talk where she said, perhaps this is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb, right?
Yeah.
Where this is not the end, right? This is not, but actually there's possibility that is emerging here. So I'm sort
Yeah.
of linking it with that little anecdote you just said about, about the entering into the unknown, right?
Yeah.
Which is fearful and seems like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. One part could say this is going to be terrible. Another part could say like this is going to be amazing, right?
Yeah.
Something and or even Mark Carney's speech, right? Like
Yeah.
something has ended and we're entering into the unknown, and yet
Yeah.
but something else, maybe more sustainable, maybe better, can
Yeah.
emerge from that. And it's interesting that that's the penultimate plague, right?
Yeah.
I mean, begging the question, I really, first of all, applaud you for not like just evading the horror of the last plague, because the
Yeah.
answer to your question from Pharaoh's
Yeah.
point of view was like, what does it take? It takes something really horrific, to
Yeah.
affect a change of heart. I'm not going to put you on the spot about that. I was like, why does the Torah do, why is that our template? Like, how do we deal with that? Unless you happen to have a response to that. All I get from that is this sense of there are times when things seem to need to get so bad
Yeah.
that it elicits an awakening, right?
Yeah.
And a change of heart. It's not, I mean, you could describe it as Pharaoh's, twisting Pharaoh's arm basically harder and harder until he says uncle, right?
Right.
Or it could be that there's some situation where all of a sudden something clicks.
Yeah.
And it's not just from force, but it's, oh, now I see. I didn't get it until now, right?
Yeah.
Now I get it. So I don't know. You want to take a stab at that one?
I mean, maybe I think if you're open to, I think I just wanted to like re-ground into that Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson quote about
Uh-huh.
the kind of what is it that the Israelites are taking from the Egyptians when they talk about wealth? Because I think what I like about that is the kind of weight of it, the responsibility
Mhm.
of it, and that again, that came just from reading the text and wanting to understand a little bit more. Like, how could it be that the Israelites then go build this mishkan, this sanctuary, and all the stuff they're supposed to have? I mean, from dolphin skin to everything, it just seems like, how is it possible that they have any material wealth to build something that could hold the divine in this journey in the wilderness? And so they return to this text about the Egyptians being wanting to kind of hand over their wealth. And so Menachem Mendel Schneerson is saying, like, it's not just their wealth, it's their spiritual wealth. And this idea of like, they wasted it. They had it. They could have done. They built incredible things. They did amazing things, but then they also oppressed people and enslaved people, and they just like couldn't figure it out. And I feel like, and I don't want to be like overly dramatic, but I do feel like, what am I doing with this, like both physical and material and also this spiritual wealth? Like, am I actually a steward of it in a responsible way?
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like the reckoning that I think a lot of us are trying to figure out, at both as as a country, as a people, and I think globally as what we're stewards of this incredible earth that has like every resource that we could need. And we're really like, we're not being great stewards. So I just appreciate that as and again, maybe it returns to like putting ourselves in Pharaoh's sandals, is like, how are we like the Egyptians?
Right.
And
Right.
how do we not let ourselves become that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you're saying, I mean, you said a number of things, and then been some observations in the chat as well, that that process of, rather than making Pharaoh other, right?
Yeah.
It's not like the monster, the bad guy, right? Who's
Right.
um, it's powerful that what you did today, and what tradition often does, is to say, like, if what you see there also lives within you in some way, and
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to look at that. And it's humbling, right? It prevents it from, number one, it creates at least, it maintains some sense of empathy and connection, of not seeing the bad guy as totally as other,
Yeah.
species, and maintaining that connection. And it's humbling in the sense of saying that, you have to look at some of those things within ourselves, because seeing something that elicits, like, as someone said in the chat, like rage, right? Like, we don't want to be acting or reacting from pure rage to
Yeah.
what we see.
Yeah.
So it does build a little muscle of compassion in some way. Um, all right, we're almost at time here, Benjamin. I'm just worth saving this chat because you elicited a lot of beautiful responses today. It's a challenging Torah portion, and it's a challenging
Yeah.
time. And thank you so much for helping us, uh, uh, helping us elicit the light
Yeah.
from this, this really hard time.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I think that I just want to say, I think
yeah,
that sometimes I think, oh, like I really feel like an Egyptian sometimes. Like I got this
yeah,
Pharaoh who's like so stubborn, isn't listening, isn't awakening, and we're enduring.
uh-huh.
Pharaoh seems okay up in the castle or wherever, but like the suffering, it feels beyond us sometimes. That's not true. It's within us, and it's our ability. We have lots of opportunities to act in the world, but I think sometimes I'm feeling a little closer to the Egyptians than others, and this might be
That's
one
under.
side.
I think you're not alone. I understand what you're saying. Like, we're
Yeah,
all suffering. I mean, it's sadly, unfortunately, tragically, like, there's consequences for so many people who are innocent, or, are so are so
yeah,
enormous. And that's really evocative today. And that is a wake up, right? Like, that is something that, that can affect a change of heart, like, just like the consequences of the climate disaster
yeah,
can wake us up, whether it's, mass, superstorms, or heat, extreme heat, or extreme cold, or extreme drought, or whatever it is.
yeah.
So like, it's like, oh my God, we got to do something. So all of which is for the purpose of waking up, which is, after all, exactly what we're doing here. So thanks for waking us up today, as
Absolutely.
always.
Thank you for the invitation. Shabbat shalom. Great to be with
Shabbat
all.
shalom. Always great to have you, Benjamin. Thanks, Harry. And again, wishing everyone safety, warmth, and resolve and resilience in the face of yet more challenges. And also, hopefully, some sweetness, light, and joy over Shabbat. And we hope to see you next week on Monday. Shabbat shalom, everyone.